Yes, please.
Sir, may I my good friend,
Yes, please.
Terry Bulgar. He
Yes.
is headmaster of a school in London.
Mm-hmm.
He has studied some part of life of the Prophet Muhammad.
Yes, please. Yes.
And also he has read a book, The Philosophy of Teaching Islam.
Yes. Yes, let me first shake hand with him and afterwards any questions, please. Come forward.
How do you do?
Yes, would you like to ask any question?
Yes, it's from a local church. Firstly, it is my regret that local churches don't have their contact to the mosque as a local teacher. Sad still. We haven't got no contact, and I accept it professionally, but that would also be as a result
It's a very important fundamental question, and I'm pleased you have asked this question. You could sit in the chair if you please. All right, are you all right, comfortable? Very good. And if you have to squat, then you can come forward and sit closer to me. Come on. Yes? Why not?
I wish Christian churches maybe were so welcoming. Thank you.
You know, God has created man in his nature. That is something which is not a philosophical statement, but it is to be felt and experienced by every man. All the emotions which we have are originally conveyed to us by God, transferred to us by God, to ultimately make us capable of getting attuned to God's will. That is the main purpose. So he has supplied us with the fundamentals, the very essentials, which when we develop later on, which we culture and educate, we could begin to see God, how he behaves and what he wants. If we were not supplied with that inner machinery, it would be impossible for us to be in communion with God except through spoken word, not through a complete unison. And the ultimate communion which is meant to be attained is through, like a tuning fork. You know, one tuning fork conveys its wavelengths and the other, when it's attuned, begins to sing the same song. So this is what I understand by the popular saying, perhaps Bible has also mentioned it, that God has created man in his own nature. Now to understand forgiveness, you have to understand forgiveness here in this world, how you react to crime and sins, and are you capable of forgiving, and to what extent? What is the philosophy of forgiveness in man? Without understanding it, it's impossible to jump over to God and begin to translate something of which we do not have the basic facts. So when we try to understand forgiveness as in human beings, then we learn of many things. There are things which can be forgiven, there are things which cannot be forgiven. There are things which require your proprietary rights before you think of forgiving. And there are things which just don't belong to you, and you have nothing to do with that. in forgiveness. For instance, if somebody has gone under debt, and the person who has the right to demand that much money from him, if he is not forgiving, you can forgive. There are things like this. If you possess that much wealth with you, that much money with you, you can transfer that money to him and say your debt is cleared, and he has no right to withhold that forgiveness from then on. But if somebody has murdered someone, this cannot apply. If somebody has committed a heinous crime against someone, the type of crime which cannot be taken back, which cannot be redressed, like innocent minor children are raped, most heinously and criminally. Now, nobody can forgive. And how can you forgive such a person when somebody else is hurt so deeply that you can't undo the crime in any way? Unless perhaps such a person repents to a degree that he suffers much more himself than the person who was wronged. And so much so that the person who was wronged begins to pity him rather remain angry with him. Then he is in a fit mood to forgive, and this is understandable. But the person, the criminal in this case, has to go through the penance himself. It's impossible for ABCD to suffer for him and transfer forgiveness to him out of charity. I mean, forgiveness is not some commodity which can be transferred like this. So, knowing what forgiveness is and what our limitations are, we must seek some balanced teaching which should apply to man in his everyday life. Now, when you go back to the teachings of the New Testament, what we are taught by way of forgiveness, then it must have some relationship, some balance with the concept of forgiveness of God. If it is imbalanced, then there is something wrong, must be something wrong somewhere. For instance, the New Testament tells us to forgive to a degree that normally it's not possible to carry out those instructions in everyday life. All the wars, for instance, which have been fought in Europe, in the Western world recently, they could not have would have been perpetrated, or could not have been fought, could not have taken shape in any form if Christian forgiveness, the concept of Christian forgiveness, was in practice in the Christian world. Now, I am not criticizing Christian world at all. What I mean to say is, ordinarily it's impossible for man to carry out those instructions unless someone is exceptional. And there are very rare cases, very few cases who can rise to such a degree that they can subscribe to the Christian concept and practically demonstrate it. Now, here in man, the standard of forgiveness laid down by Christianity is very high. So much so that normally it's not possible for ordinary human beings to live according to that standard. Now, the concept of forgiveness of God, on the other hand, is so lowly placed and so rigid that there is completely no accord between the two, no balance. God cannot forgive unless He punishes, and He expects human beings to forgive without punishing. They should go on suffer. Somebody slaps your right face and right cheek, and you turn your left cheek, and that is the concept